Hey guys, how's it going? So today I wanted to talk about some different influences that I've had on the U-bass and on the bass. Most of these are going to be bass guitar influences, but some of them will be upright bass influences, and maybe one or two will actually be U-bass players as well. But I was trying to make a list kind of before getting ready for here, and I'm really just going to talk about some at random rather than kind of being super organized about it. But a lot of these people are going to be bass players that I listened to growing up that just kind of helped me formulate my own style of playing and just kind of why I play certain things the way I do. So I'm not sure if I'll go entirely in chronological order, but I think I'm going to start that way and then go from there. So if you're watching, could you let me know if this is coming through, if the sound is okay, or if I need to change anything else? Just let me know, and I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into it. But if something is off, please just let me know. I think everything's working, but I'm not sure. So just let me know that everything's working. But when I started playing bass, I mean, honestly, this guy's not even on here. But when I first started playing bass, I didn't know who to listen to. Obviously, I didn't really have any influences. I just started playing bass because I had a sibling that played guitar, and I didn't want to copy them exactly, so I picked the bass instead of the guitar, and so I didn't really have a whole lot of musical influences at that point. I didn't really think too much about that kind of thing, and basically I ended up playing a show when I was about 10 or 11 years old. It was right about the time I turned 11, and we played a talent show thing where we played a 311 song, which is cool. Thank you, Robert. I appreciate that. And we played the 311 song Flowing, which was kind of a cool song. Pretty simple overall, and I'm pretty sure that my friend's older brother simplified the bass line. So actually what I was learning was a simpler version of the part. But 311's a really cool band, and I'd say that they kind of came back up, over the years. I don't know that I would say that their bass player was like super influential on me, but I like that he did a lot of cool slap bass stuff. He goes by Peanut, by the way. I don't know, it's not really his birth name, but it's what he's known by. But he was one of the earliest influences on my playing, I guess. And then soon after that, I really went through a metal phase. So I got into a lot of metal music, and Metallica was a really big thing. So I know a lot of you guys might not be metalheads. Some of you might be. But for me, Cliff Burton from Metallica was one of the biggest influences that kept me interested in bass, kept me not switching over to other things. And I think it was because he played a wide variety of stuff and didn't just copy the guitar parts like a lot of other bands did, where the bass was kind of just playing the root notes with everything else. So, as a younger kid, it was just more fun to play that kind of stuff. And there was one song in particular that I really, really liked called Orion. And that was one of the first songs I learned pretty much all the way through. Although the tab book that I had at the time didn't realize that some of the distorted stuff was actually bass, and they probably had it notated as guitar. But in the song Orion, there was a bass melody that happens, like a little, I would say an interlude to the song. It's not really a solo, although it drops down to just the bass and then everything builds in over that. So in that sense, it's literally a solo, isn't it? It's the only instrument playing for a minute. But it's not like a flashy thing. It's just this really nice, almost classical kind of. And it had a whole lot of things like that. Later on, it gets a little more intricate because there's a plane passing over. Okay. What was it? It's been a while since I played it, but there's just some really cool stuff in that song. Can you hear the bass okay? I might have it too quiet. what I liked about all that stuff was that there was a lot of technique involved. It wasn't just simple, but it was nice sounding stuff. Even though it was within a metal band, it's almost like this stuff was just more melodic and just more more influenced by other styles and not just metal. And so I liked that aspect of it, that it was just really some really nice sounding stuff. And then with the more traditional, heavy metal kinds of things, it gave me a lot of speed with the right hand. Like I had to be able to alternate between the index and middle finger. And I mean, that particular part's played a little bit differently on bass, but I thought that's how it was in one of the other Metallica songs. But even in Orion, there was another part that was like. So I kind of attribute getting more dexterity in the right hand, just speed with the index and middle fingers. Like I had to develop that in order to play the music that I liked. So that was a really big one. And Cliff Burton was kind of just, like he was a really cool bass player that had a really interesting playing, in spite of the fact that he was playing in a metal group, where most metal bands would kind of just have the bass copy the guitar part. So I kind of liked that. There was a lot more originality in there. So Cliff Burton is one of my favorites. And I give him credit for why I didn't switch over entirely to guitar and just kind of like drop bass off, was because I was interested in playing that stuff enough. And ironically, some people could argue that some of what he's playing is playing it more like a guitar player, but not that part. I feel like that's still kind of a bass pattern that the guitar melodies worked over. So yeah, he was just a very cool bass player, and played a big role on my. He had a big influence on my playing early on. So Cliff Burton was one of my favorites, and then some other guys. I listened to a little bit of Red Hot Chili Peppers, and Flea had a whole bunch of really cool stuff. And if you're not familiar with Red Hot Chili Peppers, they have some kind of varieties of sounds going on. Sometimes things are more melodic, and sometimes things are almost like a little bit rap influenced, where it's a lot of fast words and stuff. But the bass lines are kind of cool. So there's just a variety of stuff between the slap stuff that Flea would do. And then another one, Aeroplane. That kind of thing. So a lot of slap and pop. But then when he wasn't playing slap and pop, there were still some interesting songs. I'm trying to remember it. There's just some cool stuff in Under the Bridge, if you've heard that one, and then Soul to Squeeze. I can't quite remember the bass line note for note on that or anything. I'm trying to remember that one. Oh. Anyway, I can't remember that one, but Flea had a big influence on my playing too, because he was doing a lot of really cool slap bass stuff, and just also had some other interesting lines. I just liked the songs, so he had some influence as well early on. And then when I got a little bit older, I was in jazz band, and so I was playing all sorts of stuff, and so just not too concerned about what I was playing there, and I didn't really know the bass parts and stuff, but there was a little bit of jazz influence there, but not any bass players in particular on a lot of that stuff, but just that style influenced me a lot. But we had a guest come in, basically some guests. It was almost like a band that the band director had on the side. So like they taught middle school band, but then when they were out of school, they had a jazz group that they kind of directed as well. And so the members of the jazz group came and did little sectionals with us. And there was one guy that just, the bass player guy, he's like, oh, you know a lot of different things. That's cool that you know how to play metal stuff. You like the band Tool. I forgot to mention Tool. I guess I got into Tool before all this other stuff. The bass player, Justin Chancellor of Tool, is just very creative. So just a couple things from him. Schism, if you've ever heard the song Schism. He's playing chords on the bass, and it probably sounds better to pretend to pick. So he had some cool stuff going on there, and then there was a song called 46 and 2 that I liked a lot. So it had a really cool bass line, and that was a lot of fun. But then after that, this guy introduced me to a whole new set of bass players. And he's like, oh, well, you can play pretty well, and you seem to like a lot of people, so you know who Victor Wooten is, right? I'm like, no, and so he made a list of bass players I should listen to, and single-handedly introduced me to Victor Wooten, Jaco Pastorius, Ray Brown, as far as upright bass players go. I can't remember who else was on that list, honestly. There were a couple others. Maybe John Patitucci might have been on there too. And so he just introduced me to all these really good bass players that were outside of the styles of music I listened to at the time. And I delved into it. And of course, I heard Victor Wooten and had to learn as much Victor Wooten stuff as I could. So I bought a tab book of his. I don't have it around. I thought I might have it somewhere over here, but I guess I put it back up. But, Victor Wooten took the slap style to a totally different level. He had a song called Classical Thump that was really cool. But it was all solo-based stuff, so it wasn't like ensemble stuff. So he was doing... I'm not sure if this will work on the rubber. Yeah, it doesn't work too on the rubber. Yeah, so basically what I'm trying to do here is go down with the thumb, hammer on, and pluck up. But these strings just have too little tension, so it's kind of hard to get that sound right. So I'm going to try it down here by the bridge. It's really hard. My fingernail keeps sticking on the string. But on the metal strings, it would sound a little bit better. But yeah, Victor Wooten did a whole lot of stuff like that. He did a lot of stuff with tapping, right? And so I got a lot of that stuff from him. This idea of going down with the thumb and up with the thumb. So you can go like down, up, pluck, pluck. So all that stuff I got from Victor Wooten. Then I got into other bass players. Obviously, Jaco Pastorius was one. The thing that I like about him is his crazy use of 16th notes. He had a lot of a lot of simpler stuff. But it had that his version of the Chicken had that kind of thing going on, and so it was cool just his use of 16th notes and certain notes being kind of faster. And then there was a song called Teen Town that was a really big influence on me. And apparently I can't play it super cleanly on there. I think Meme World, I've already kind of done some slap earlier, actually. But I'll do some more, I'm sure, here in a few when I go over some other bass players who did more slap stuff. But Jaco didn't really do much slap. So 3, 4. 3. But Jaco had a whole bunch of cool stuff like that. And his use of 16th notes was really awesome. He also used harmonics a lot. So he had a song called Portrait of Tracy, which apparently I can't get the harmonics to ring out at all right now. Probably partially the rubber strings and partially the way I had the amp set. had a whole bunch of harmonics, and he's actually playing melodies with the harmonics. And later on, he's like doing chords where he plays one note just normal with his thumb, and then he would have the other two notes of the chord be harmonics. Right? So that was kind of a cool thing to make some things out of, though. I've heard that Jaco used 5 notes grouping. I mean, Jaco did a whole bunch of things. I wouldn't say that he did any one particular thing. Another thing that I picked up from him, though, there's this like warm-up exercise that he does that's really cool. And he does like major 7 arpeggios. And so he goes up one of them, then he comes down the next one, up the next one. Yeah, you know, so I ran out of frets, but you get the idea. Yeah. I guess if you count that as a fret, I could do that one up there. But he just does a whole lot of different things. And I'm sure he did some five note groupings and some, you know, maybe 7 note groupings and all sorts of things. He did a lot, right? But one of the things that stuck out about his playing was his use of 16th notes, his use of harmonics, and just kind of that he played a lot more melodically on the bass rather than just doing a harmony and stuff. So underrated bass players, I'll probably get to that here in a minute, but there are a lot. But another one of my favorites is Marcus Miller, and I almost feel like I shouldn't be playing that on the U bass because I just feel like his slap tone is kind of what makes him so like awesome. So I'm actually going to get the other bass out so that I can play some of the stuff on there and come back to the U bass in a second. But there are quite a few underrated bass players. I feel like Queen's bass player, was it John Deacon? He's pretty underrated in the grand scheme of things. He throws in so much really cool, little cool runs all over the place and just all sorts of stuff. But should have seen this first. It's not staying in tune. Close enough. Okay. So Marcus Miller is one of my favorite bass players, and so what I really like about him he had a really good tone, and he had a bass that was similar to jazz bass, but he did a whole lot of like I think he uses some outboard stuff, a different preamp, and some other things just to get a cool tone. But I really like his slap sound. So one of my favorite songs by him was called Power, and that was that one I started to play. So he had a really cool tone, and honestly, if I could sound exactly like somebody, it would be really cool to sound like Marcus Miller. So I really like his slap tone and just his style. He just does so many little intricate things. So, but once again, a lot of these guys are solo bass players, basically. Like Jaco had some stuff that was solo and some stuff that where he was playing along with the band and just having more of a traditional bass player role. But he was always a little bit more busy than the other players, and he used a fretless bass a lot, which I liked. And Marcus does a lot more slap stuff, and he actually did a version of a Jaco song where he like slapped the whole thing, which I thought was pretty cool. He did a slap version of Teen Town, which that just sounds, you know, so it sounds like a lot of work going through that whole entire song slapped, but he did it. Okay, so while I've got this bass out, I guess I could talk about a few others, like Les Claypool, of course. You see the Primus poster back there, and it is signed. I don't know if you can see that, but Les and the drummer signed it. So if you look really closely above their heads, if the glare is not in the way, those two have signatures above them. and it was really cool getting to meet them. But yeah, Les Claypool's a really interesting player, and what I got from him was kind of like using my fingers kind of like a pick, but with the thumb. So like going back and forth between the thumb and kind of strumming. So like an example of that is the song American Life. I'm not super clean on it, but you get the idea. The whole, you know, strumming down with the fingers, but also playing with the thumb for the root note. And it's kind of like you have this groove going. So it's like the thumb, and then the rest of them are strums. So it's like thumb, up, down, up, down, up. Yeah, I'd say John Lodge of the Moody Blues is a good player. I think my buddy Sean, that has a channel called Soul Night Live, SOAL Night Live, that he actually got an interview with John. So that's cool that you mentioned him, because I think he actually had that interview with him. And yes, he's a good bass player for sure. I played a few Moody Blues songs, but I haven't really delved deep into them. So he wasn't as much an influence on my playing, but he's definitely a good underrated player. I have to agree with that. And a lot of players named John, I guess. So John Deacon too. All right, so I guess I'll fill you guys in. Seth was going over my influences. So first one I mentioned was Cliff Burton from Metallica, because he's kind of part of the reason that I stuck with bass and didn't leave, because in my younger years I needed something exciting and interesting that held my interest, and his playing definitely did that. So I covered a little bit of things like Tool, Justin Chancellor. I really like the way he plays, even though he kind of plays kind of like a guitar player and plays with the pick a lot. I just really like the kind of uniqueness of his playing, you know, the ideas that he comes up with. So he had a cool, unique style. And then I named a few others. Let's see. Victor Wooten, Marcus Miller, Jaco Pastorius, Les Claypool. So I went through all that stuff. Yeah, Tool's got a really cool sound, and I got to say that it did have a big influence on my playing, even though I mostly play with the fingers. I did work on some of that stuff, and I did play with the pick, although right now I don't have a pick around to demonstrate any of the other stuff. I don't think I mentioned him yet, but Chris Squire of Yes. There were bass magazines that I like to read, and sometimes they would just have transcriptions of stuff. And so, you know, Roundabout was in there, so that's kind of a fun one as far as picked songs go. It's a little harder to do the yes, but it's a little harder to do the upstrums on here with my fingernails. So, you know, I can't really do that cleanly, apparently. And then you can do that little, it's really a guitar riff, but it sounds like bass doubled it or something. But Yes is really cool. And then of course he had that, I was talking about harmonics with Jaco Pastorius. But Chris Squire had a song called The Fish, right? And so that one starts with harmonics, and then it's like he has that loop going throughout the whole. And then he has a whole bunch of other loops that go on in there. You know, I can't remember all that, but I did a cover of it a while ago. It was really cool, and I got the chance to meet him before he passed away, and it was it's really cool getting to meet him. Another one, I was kind of naming a whole bunch of ones that I got introduced to all at the same time in 8th grade when I was in jazz band, and someone just wrote out a whole bunch of names on a piece of paper because they realized, you know, they're like, oh, you know, it's like you seem to know a good amount of bass. Do you know Victor Wooten? Do you know Marcus Miller? Do you know Jaco Pastorius? And at the time I didn't. And so he just like single-handedly introduced me to all of them. And yeah, Jack Bruce is great, Robert. That's a good mention. Jack Bruce is a really good player. I kind of like how he's got that kind of, warm, fuzzy kind of tone. But yeah, he was definitely a smaller influence on my playing, but I really like his playing. And yes, Tim Comerford is also a really good player from Rage Against the Machine. With that, I definitely did play a lot of that stuff in high school. So things like Killing in the Name of, that song, and then I'm trying to think, Bomb Track was a really fun one. That whole thing, and then the and yeah, Flea I mentioned earlier as well. So yeah, he had a big influence on my playing. Obviously, things like it may have been my introduction to slap bass, somebody else playing part of Aeroplane. So that might have actually been my introduction to slap bass, now that I think about it. That's pretty interesting. And Flea does play trumpet. I think he played trumpet on a Mars Volta album, out of all things, too, randomly. But yeah, he plays on a lot of stuff, and I don't think I ever realized that he was the one playing bass on "You Ought to Know," Alanis Morissette, until recently. So that's just kind of a tidbit of information about Flea as well. As far as, I only have one upright bass player on this list that I made, but he's not the only upright influence, because obviously like John Patitucci and a couple other people are influences too. But by far my favorite upright bass player is Ray Brown, and he just had a really cool style. Like that's the main reason that I liked what he was doing. It just sounded so cool and so laid back, and just the tone that he got out of his upright bass was just really special and really amazing. And his bass ended up, I mean, after he passed away, his bass ended up in the possession of John Clayton. And John Clayton went and did a clinic somewhere, and I actually got to play on Ray Brown's bass for a minute, because John Clayton's just the nicest guy in the world, as well as another phenomenal upright player. But yeah. So yeah, there are a lot of good influences, and honestly, most of them have influenced my playing too. Of course, Tal Wilkenfeld. I'm actually not sure who Danielle Nicole is, but Tal Wilkenfeld is definitely awesome. I definitely enjoy her playing. Of course, Stanley Clark, obviously. I guess it's going to end up being more like, stump the bass player kinds of stuff, right? I'll keep naming people that have most likely influenced me, and if they have, then I'll probably be able to play a little snippet of one of their songs or something. Yeah, so that's some more Stanley Clark. That one's Silly Putty, but I like doing the Primus cover of Silly Putty. Yeah, Pino Palladino, all sorts of people. Y'all naming some great ones. I'm trying to go with who influenced me, like, growing up. Like, as an adult, all these guys influenced me. And some of these, I know there's only been a couple of female mentions, but they're pretty awesome too. Although I'm not familiar with the Danielle, who's Danielle Nicole? Whose bass player was that? Who did they play with? But yeah, let me know, Jeff, if you got a minute. But Tal Wilkenfeld. Oh, another upright bass player that I really like, Esperanza Spalding. I mean, she's awesome. And then Christian Mcbride, that guy is just amazing, and he's a monster on there. And Charles Mingus, that's another one for sure. I trying to remember at some point. I won't be able to play it, but we ended up doing Haitian Fight Song in a combo in college. So that's cool. Very cool. Awesome. I'll have to check her out. I don't know the Danielle Nicole baseball. I'll have to give her a listen. I'm sure she's awesome. Oh, and then one that I haven't named, but all right, I'm getting, yeah, Ron Carter's great too. The more y'all name, the more I'm gonna get off track from the ones that are on my list too. But all those bass players are great. A couple that I haven't mentioned yet. I started the stream off with a little John Paul Jones, but John Paul Jones is a very great bass player. I don't think he's underrated because I think people know that he's a great bass player, but he definitely had an influence on my playing. I really liked songs like Ramble On, because it had a little bit of dexterity and a little bit of stuff going on in the chorus, and it had a really nice melodic bass part under the verse. Right, so there's all that cool stuff, but yeah, there's a whole bunch of things here. So yeah, Ramble On had that part, and then later on it has that, what is it, what is it, I can't remember it at all, shoot. But it has a lot of 16th notes and a lot of other things, and he admitted that he was really inspired by James Jamerson playing with one finger, and that on all that stuff on Ramble On, he was using one finger to keep a consistent tone, much in the same way that James Jamerson kind of used one finger to do all this like crazy stuff, but kept a really consistent tone for that. So yeah, I switched over from the U-bass to the bass guitar because a lot of the slap stuff doesn't really translate well, doing the Marcus Miller kind of stuff. Gosh, can't play today apparently. But yeah, a lot of that stuff didn't translate at all onto the U-bass. But James Jamerson, that, however, would translate onto the U-bass because that Motown sound is very muted. I'll get back to the U-bass in a second, guys. All right. Yeah, so James Jamerson, he called it the hook. He had one finger. It came from like the upright technique and everything. But honestly, the way he approached electric bass wasn't really an upright style. There's one video of him playing that I've been able to find, and there may be more. I've just only seen one video of him playing. And he had a pickup cover over the neck pickup, and he just slide his fingers up and down, almost like he's anchoring his hand with the back fingers, and then playing with the one pointer finger as he's going. So I thought that was really interesting because I would have assumed he was just kind of anchoring and playing with one finger like that. But because of that pickup cover, he had a totally different technique that I would have never expected. But I thought that was kind of interesting that he had that. He might have still anchored the thumb too, I'm not sure. But I have to go back and watch the video. But it was a little bit different of a technique than I would have expected. But I've been kind of going over a couple of those with students and stuff. And one of the James Jamerson lines I really like. And it was right. So there's just a whole bunch of cool things. And I've kind of gone over the Motown sound and a lot of the other videos that we've done on Motown and everything. But he just had a really cool style, a really good use of chromatics, a really interesting use of rhythm. He had some really like unique, maybe not super unique now, but at the time it's just like he pioneered this style. And you can tell that he had some like blues influence and some jazz influence. They definitely played bass, in those contexts, because a lot of the sort of melodic parts of those bass lines or the chromatic walk-ins and all these things appeared in his bass playing, but not with the same rhythm, just a totally different approach with some syncopated 16th note stuff that had to have been one of the things that that inspired Jaco's style, so I don't think Jaco would have been quite as much like that if it wasn't for the combination of James Jamerson's bass playing when he was listening to a whole lot of R&B kind of stuff and Motown stuff and everything like that. And then Jaco was more inspired by the bebop players who also played a lot of 16th notes and stuff, obviously songs like Donna Lee. So, he had all those influences too. But yeah, I'll go ahead and switch back over to the U-bass. Because basically, I just switched over to this for the slappers, because the rubber strings don't really lend themselves to like the double thump and some other things like that for Victor Wooten technique. Although I probably should have waited and talked about Geddy Lee before switching back over. Rush did have a big influence on me, because they were one of those bands. Yeah, and Donna Lee's a wonderful song too. But you know, I was trying in high school to be like the best bass player in the world, and obviously I did not succeed on that. But it was fun trying to be, you know, stuff like that. So I would just get inspired by anybody that was doing something that I couldn't, right? So Jaco, there was a lot of stuff, a lot of time I spent trying to learn some Jaco bass lines, because, you know, that stuff was really hard. It took me through, you know, after middle school to realize that Cliff Burton wasn't the best of the best and everything. And I had a long way to go learning all these other bass lines, all these other bass parts, and, you know, listening to a whole lot of other styles and everything. But yeah, Geddy Lee played a big role, because I listened to a lot of Rush, and that stuff, you know, also has a lot of 16th notes, a lot of interesting rhythms. It's not the same as the Motown sound. He picked totally different, you know, vibes and scales to kind of pull from and everything. But you know, things like YYZ, of course. So what I liked about that was there were all these odd time signatures in Rush's music, you know, and then there were all these weird little like twists. You know, all that stuff. So it was challenging trying to figure out how to get the fingers to move faster and to be able to play these songs. And so it just had a big influence, once again, on speed and on right hand technique and trying to get better left hand technique. And, you know, every time I would learn one of those songs, I would feel proud, you know, proud of myself for learning parts of the song or whatever. But it was all about trying to be competitive and trying to be the best or something. And then you realize at a certain point that, one, there's no such thing as the best. And, you know, after hearing people like Victor Wooten and stuff, it's just kind of like, yeah, you know, I could spend all my life getting really good at the couple techniques they're doing, but I could also write stuff, and I could also, you know, just try to get more well-rounded as a player. And things just kind of changed. But in high school, it was all about, you know, being able to play the hardest things. So another bass player in kind of that vein of things, there were some techniques like bass sweeping. And one of the guys that had a really cool sweep kind of picking technique was Adam Niddy. And so he had a song called Schizo. And if you've ever heard that song, I know he's a little bit more of a underground bass player. You may not know him. I think his most recent notable gig that you'd probably you know, have heard of, he played with Kenny Loggins on the last few tours, or at least the last tour that he did, obviously before the shutdowns and everything. But he played a little bit with him and a whole bunch of other people. But he also does a lot of like jazz fusion kinds of stuff that's just kind of crazy with the bass. And so what he would do with some of these techniques is he'd take some arpeggios. It'd help if I could play it like the same one. And so what he would do is he would combine tapping, pulling off, and then he'd kind of sweep up the strings by doing a raking motion with one finger. And then, oh man, the Bernadette bass line. Let's see, it's in here. But that's a good call. I don't know it note for note yet, so I'd probably have to play through it pretty slowly. But Bernadette is in here. I do like that one. Obviously, that's a really good bass line. But yeah, I'm totally all over the place. Sorry, I can't stick to like one train of thought. I read one comment, I'm like, that is a good idea. But what was I trying to say? Oh, with Adam Niddy, he had a whole lot of things like that that were just really, really influential, and I really loved trying to do all that bass sweeping stuff. And if you get a chance, listen to his song Schizo, Skitzo, because that one to me in high school was like, if I could do this, I could do anything. And I never got like crazy good at it or anything, but it just has so many elements. It starts with some sweeps. It has a cool slap section in the middle. It has this really fast, what is it? I can't do it on the U bass apparently. Oh, that's not quite it. But he's a lot cleaner on that stuff, and obviously less string noise because he's not on the U bass. But yeah. All right. So how fast can I play something I haven't played through before? Honestly, not too fast with the Motown stuff. What was it? Let's see. 4 and then. Oh, I gotta do it up here, don't I? Shoot, this is probably gonna be too hard for me to get in time. Yeah, that's gonna take me a minute to really get it down. So the first part's yeah, but yeah, there's some cool stuff in that Bernadette line for sure. I probably have to check it out and then come back. What is that? We should have a. What are you saying? We should have a part? I'm not quite sure on that. Seth, what are you saying on that? Okay, so it's so no 20 and 2. What is that? Okay, yeah. So Bernadette has a really cool line that I can't just sight read apparently. But yeah, that's a really good one. Really good call. But yeah, he's definitely a major influence as well. I think I've covered a lot of the bases there. John Paul Jones from Zeppelin, James Jamerson, Billy Sheehan. I have to include him because his 3-finger technique is really awesome. He did this warm-up technique that I've tried to do a lot, but I don't really incorporate a lot. But where you do a 4-note pattern over here, where we do like that warm-up technique where we just pick 4 frets in a row. You go 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 3, 4, 5, 6 on each string, something like that, and then go up 1 and come back down. But he would use 3 fingers on the right hand and never break the pattern of ring, middle, index, ring, middle, index. And so you'd end up with ring, middle, index, ring, then on the next string. And so that was just always a fun kind of thing to work on playing faster. But yeah, Bernadette would sound really, really good on U bass because it's already got that sort of semi-muted tone. So yeah, that whole was it 1E and the 2E. Yeah, so I don't have it exactly right, but it's just doing that walk down. It's a minor scale kind of walk down sound. But yeah, no, that's a really good song, and obviously that bass line is really awesome. If I go through it, I'll know it note for note because this has transcriptions in it. If you haven't seen that book, Standing in the Shadows of Motown, and it's just got some really cool stuff. And the really cool thing about it is they basically interviewed or they got a whole bunch of other bass players that were inspired by him and like really big name people. Speaking of influence, Nathan Watts from Stevie Wonder, Marcus Miller played on the track here, and they got them to record a CD where these other bass players are playing a whole bunch of James Jamerson lines. It's really cool. So you get Marcus Miller playing "I Was Made to Love Her." You get let's see, Jack Bruce playing "Come Around Here." You get Rocco Prestia from Tower Power playing Just a Little Misunderstanding. So just a whole bunch of Motown lines. Willie Weeks in here. Let's see, Bob Babbitt, of course, but he's, you know, he was one of the Motown players as well. Jimmy Haslett, John Patitucci. I mean, a lot of the people I named earlier, a lot of them are in here. It's just a really cool book. So if you get a chance to find a copy of that, I highly recommend it. Very cool stuff. Yeah, A Whole Lot of Love is pretty cool. I'm not sure about like specific bass part stuff in there. You know, I know that's really a lot of it's based around that lick, but that one is a cool song, definitely. At some point, I might do a dedicated video featuring Bernadette, because I would need to work on it a little bit more, and that would be really cool. And the only thing about that is just if I'm actually just doing the bass line, then, you know, it's kind of weird with the copyright stuff with YouTube. But if I was like putting the tabs out, so I don't think I could put the tabs out for it. But if I were just playing it or something, and maybe doing a version where like there's ukulele or something along with it, or maybe even arranging the melody for bass, I'm not sure. I'd have to look into that a little bit, but that would be kind of cool, because it's definitely a really cool bass line, a really cool song. But I mean, to kind of sound like him, you know, it's like he uses a lot of arpeggios. He outlines chords pretty well. He uses a lot of chromatic walks into notes. So like when he was doing the I Was Made to Love Her bass line, that part's my favorite lick in there. He's doing that idea that we talked about in Motown lines. We're going from the 1 to the 6 to the 5. But then he goes back to the 6, chromatically walks back into the root of the chord, then jumps to the 3rd of the chord, but jumps down to it, jumps up to the 5th of the chord. So that's just an arpeggio, just with the F up high instead of down low. So same thing. And then he chromatically walks down into the next chord. So that to me is just like so cool, and just kind of using those ideas, using the chromatics in that way where you could just walk into chord tones within the chords. But then with a lot of stuff like the Bernadette line, it looked like he was mostly, he did that arpeggio up and then did a chromatic walk to the next note, and then mostly just did root 5th octave for that one, and then had another chromatic note in there. I'm getting the rhythm wrong, but you get the idea. And then he's just outlining the other chord. So it's mostly just kind of like that power chord shape where you have root 5th and octave, or it's an arpeggio where you got root 3rd, 5th octave, that kind of thing. Right, and so let's see, Curmudgeon, interesting. Lord, I'm just call you Lord and Curmudgeon. He sounded like a jazz upright bassist because he played upright bass. I mean, a lot of those techniques, a lot of those things he was doing, he adapted from upright bass to electric bass, because he started on upright bass. And I do believe there are, if I'm not mistaken, I read somewhere that there are recordings where he definitely played upright on some Motown stuff too. So I don't know. And then in the Standing in the Shadows of Motown, I know that his son ended up with his upright bass, and you can see where where his thumb was dug into the side of the neck. It was all worn on that side because he played it a lot, you know. But yeah, that's pretty cool. Play bass and bass. Do you mean upright bass or electric bass, Luke? But yeah, so there's a whole lot of stuff there. Back to influences. I mean, I've kind of named a lot of the ones I wanted to. Obviously, John Patitucci is cool, but I don't know if I learned any particular songs of his. But that's cool. Okay, U-bass and electric bass, cool, awesome. Yeah, so I like playing a lot of those different things. But yeah, upright. I've always liked bass players like you know, like Ron Carter. I know he's mentioned earlier. Eddie Gomez actually came to Georgia State and did a clinic, and that was cool getting to meet him. Christian McBride, super awesome player. Oh, thank you. Appreciate the compliment on my hair. Um, and then you know, all those upright players are really, really awesome. But Ray Brown is the one that if I were trying to sound like someone on upright and I'd want the tone and the playing, then I would like to sound like him. So a lot of the times I kind of like imitate him. But yeah, so Ray Brown's probably the biggest influence I have on upright. Although there are other ones. Brian Bromberg did this cool version of what's it called? All Blues. Oh, and speaking of All Blues, a lot of that original Miles Davis stuff had Paul Chambers on bass, and Paul Chambers is also a really big influence because he had that. How does it go? I'm going to confuse it with my song because I wrote a song that's so similar to one of his. Okay, so that's mine. But Paul Chambers had a song called Whims of Chambers that was fun to play through like that. And Seth, I've actually never delved into Charles Hayden's stuff, so I don't really have a negative, you know, I don't really have like a positive or negative outlook on him, just kind of neutral because I'm not familiar enough with his playing. So I need to dig deeper into people like Charles Hayden to have an opinion. But yeah, Benjamin Rhodes. I'm not sure if I know the name. I'm not sure if I'm familiar with him. Can you give me a little background on his playing? I'm not sure which band or what he does on his own or what he does. Yep. So but yeah, so that's a lot of my influences. I know this has been like scatterbrained because you guys kept naming a whole bunch of people that I know, and I just go, oh well, let me play a little bit of what they're doing right now. What who does he play with? Oh, favorite U bassist. Cool. Oh, speaking of U bassists, so somebody I don't think he's underrated. I think people know about him, but Bakithi Kumala. He has a signature U bass. He's a really good bass player, but as far as people that have like influenced me on U bass with the U bass, I would say Bakithi Kamalo. He was Paul Simon's bass player, and he can play U bass really well. And if you look up some videos of him playing, there's one where he's demonstrating different sounds on the U bass, and he's just doing a whole lot of cool techniques that sound really good. And his style of slap with the tone that he had was really cool. Bud Powell, cool. But yeah, Bakithi Kumalo, and I kind of want to get his signature U bass because he's got a fretless U bass that's really cool looking. But he can play really well, and obviously his songs with Paul Simon are just amazing. The stuff on the Graceland album is really super cool, and if you haven't just looked him up, it's kind of hard to spell his name. If let's see if I can get it right. Bakithi okay, Bakithi Kumalo. His last name is Kumalo. Sounds a little bit easier, but very, very good bass player. His work with Paul Simon on the Graceland stuff is just amazing. Definitely worth listening to. So all of that. Can I slap the bass for you? I mean, I did it earlier, but I can do it again. I can always do it again. And hey, Angela, how's it going? I figured, because I think that your screen name's the same on Instagram, right? Thanks for stopping in, by the way. And Angela's husband is someone I've played bass with a whole bunch, named Eric, and I played in his trio for a long time. So, and then he also kind of joined in with a progressive rock band called Story of a Life that I'm in, and he was playing keyboards with us, and we did a whole lot of covers that were really fun, like Kansas, Carry On My Wayward Son. That one has so many good bass lines too, so I guess I'd have to add that as an influence, even though I don't think I know the bass player's name in Kansas, and that's kind of sad. But yeah, that song alone has so many cool bass parts in it, just between what I already played from the intro of the song to the little outro part that the solos happen over, and then I don't know, all that part in the middle. Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of cool stuff there. Oh, very cool that you met the drummer. I saw them a couple years ago, and I'm trying to remember what lineup they had. Their lineup has changed so much that I think it's just the drummer and one of the guitar players that's original, and that everybody else is a different member. But yeah, he's an awesome drummer. I really like the way he plays with that writing. You know, it works really well with it. Dark Necessities is a good Chili Pepper song. I'm not quite sure that I remember that one, but I know I've checked it out at some point. Yeah, there are tons of good Chili Pepper songs. Well, let's see. Someone asked, or Arnold asked, I'm thinking of getting a Donner Beltway looper. I've not tried that looper out. I would just go by whatever reviews are there, but at some point I'll need a new looper pedal, so maybe I should look into that, because I know Donner's stuff is typically more affordable. So I've heard good things about their basses, and I've heard good things about their effects pedals, but I haven't really used anything from them at all. So I don't really know. Oh, but a minute ago I was talking about upright players, and oh, the TC looper. I'll have to check that one out too. That one sounds good. So Brian Bromberg is a bass player that plays upright bass and electric bass, and he had an album where he did some solo upright stuff, and one of those songs was All Blues, the Miles Davis classic. And I kind of did a version on Ubase that's not quite like his. His has a lot more craziness going on, but it was kind of inspired by his, where he played the melody on the G string. So you got that. Right, and so he'd do all that stuff, and so that inspired me because he was using tenths. When I wrote Green Tea, I think that was the reason why I started with a tenth, was because of that cover. Because he literally started it with the same chord. So so that's kind of an influence. I have to mention him because of things like that. And then Michael Manring's a big influence, but I never really tried to play much of his stuff because he liked alternate tunings so much, and I just didn't really ever get into, you know, I like being grounded in how the bass is tuned, with the exception of like doing drop D. I didn't really want to like completely uproot my whole concept of where notes are on the neck. But Michael Manring's a really good one. Seth, you're saying the All Blues, the Brian Bromberg version of All Blues, you know how to play? Because that's true. That's a pretty hard one to do. A pretty awesome one. But that's a good call. That's a good song. So that's cool. And I guess I got to mention, you know, the other bass players in Metallica did influence me. I'm just jumping all over the place. I know I mentioned Cliff Burton earlier, but obviously the other ones did too. Because Jason Newsted, I ended up learning a lot of the songs that he did. One of the earlier songs that I learned when playing was like "My Friend of Misery." Yeah, and he used a pick, but you know, that was very influential, and I've probably written things based on that idea of playing against a pedal tone like he was doing there. And Khalid, or I think it's Khalid. Let me know if I'm butchering your name. I apologize. But it's hard to hear the bass in metal music. That's true. A lot of times the bass is doubling the guitar, which makes it even harder to hear. But every now and then the bass gets a chance to shine. Oh, speaking of bass getting a chance to shine, or bass getting covered up in the music, I like Dream Theater a lot too. So I got to mention John Young of Dream Theater, because he had some awesome stuff going on in a lot of songs. But there were some cases of his bass being too quiet in the mix on certain albums as well. Sometimes it happens with metal, and other times it's just that they're doubling the guitar most of the time, so it just doesn't stand out, even though it's there. And you know, without it, it would sound a lot less powerful. But that might be why you don't hear the bass as much in metal music. But with Metallica, with Cliff Burton, you really could hear the bass a lot in the music, and that was one of the cool things about it. In the Jason Newsted era, obviously they turned him down a whole bunch, and there are a whole lot of jokes and memes and everything about the Injustice for All album where you couldn't hear him at all. And then, you know, somebody remixed it and posted it on YouTube, I think, with Injustice for Jason, where they boosted the bass track so you could hear in there. But if you ever hear the isolated bass tracks on that, one thing I got to say about Jason's playing is he's just a very clean bass player. He played all that stuff really fast, really cleanly with the pick, and I got to give him a lot of credit for that. So that was cool to hear the isolated bass tracks from each of the Metallica bass players. But and obviously with Cliff, there's a lot of stuff that even with the stuff we know about him, or that I knew about him before, still hearing some of those isolated bass tracks like Fight Fire with Fire, I thought that intro was mainly just guitar, but he's playing along and doing little two-note chords, you know, with the guitar part, and that's part of the reason it sounds really cool. So if you ever get a chance, check out the isolated bass on Fight Fire with Fire off of the Ride the Lightning album by Metallica. You'll hear a little bit of stuff in there. And then in addition to that, of course, For Whom the Bell Tolls was really going where the bass had a little lead line in the beginning of it. And then Call of Cthulhu, where he has these little crazy distorted leads going on in the background a lot of times in that song. And then, yeah, just a lot of the songs on Master of Puppets. He had the intro to Damage Inc., it's a really weird intro and really crazy, but it's almost like he used these effects pedals and did volume swells and did a whole bunch of layers of bass tracks that you really wouldn't expect were bass, and just made a really, really cool intro to that song as well. But I keep going on about him because he was probably my first big influence on bass, was Cliff Burton. But there are tons. So I'm just gonna, this list that I wrote down: Victor Wooten, Marcus Miller, Jaco Pastorius, Les Claypool, Cliff Burton, of course, Ray Brown, Adam Niddy, Flea, Justin Chancellor of Tool, Billy Sheehan, Michael Manring, James Jamerson, John Paul Jones, and a whole bunch of others. And I think y'all named a lot of them too, with like Tim Comerford from Rage Against the Machine. There's just so many bass players that play so many cool things. And a lot of times, even listening to pop music, if you listen to the bass lines to songs that you maybe even didn't like back in the day or whatever, and you listen to them now, sometimes those bass players play some pretty crazy stuff. It's pretty awesome. So the TC Ditto Loopers seem pretty popular. Yeah, I had a friend that had the Ditto, an older version of the Ditto, and I think the new one's even better, and those are pretty good. Yeah, I forgot Gene Simmons because I've just never been as much of a Kiss fan. Of I don't think he's a bad bass player or anything, but everything else about the band just kind of turned me off to where I didn't care if the bass playing was good, bad, or okay or whatnot. But there's a funny video. Well, I don't know if it's funny, but it's an interesting video of Carol Kay showing Gene Simmons how to play some cool stuff on bass, and he was actually doing a pretty good job on it. So he's not a bad bass player. I just don't care much for the just the over the top. I mean, the show was probably cool to go and watch and everything, but I just felt like they were more about show than the music in some cases. And if you're a big Kiss fan, please forgive me for saying that. He certainly wasn't a bad bass player or anything. I just got the feeling that more of the music, it was really more about the show, even though the music wasn't bad or anything. It was still pretty good music. But Carol Kay is a good one too. I don't know that I've really been super influenced by anything in particular that she's played, but there's some really good bass parts that she's done on a whole bunch of different albums. And I know there's like some confusion about a couple of the Motown bass lines that she was pretty sure she played on some of them, and everybody else is like, well, James Jamerson did that. And so it's really hard to tell, but she did do some versions of some of those songs, in other contexts, and did have a good one. And then Michael Anthony from Van Halen. I mean, he had to follow Van Halen, so he's pretty good on that. I've never like dived deep to really give him a fair assessment, in all honesty. And with Greg Lake, I just haven't heard enough. Basically, I have a friend that showed me some of his playing, and he's a phenomenal player. I just need to listen to more of him, honestly. My favorite bass player is Joe Dart. Man, I didn't even mention Joe Dart. I guess, more as of late, he'd be influential on my playing because trying to play that. Well, I'm just gonna go with Joe Dart instead of the joke that's going on. But nice little joke. But Joe Dart actually is a really good bass player, and so even though you accidentally got me to think of that, then it's still a good call because he's a good bass player as well. But yeah, all these bass players are really good, and y'all named some really, really awesome ones, and a couple that I need to check out and dive deeper into. All of that stuff. So thank you guys so much for hanging out. Do you have any other like honorable mentions maybe that I didn't mention earlier? I don't think I said anything. Seth a while ago mentioned Larry Graham. Larry Graham is a phenomenal bass player, and he's attributed with inventing slap bass. So I think that's kind of important. So yes, that would make him a huge influence on me because he influenced all these bass players like Stanley Clark and Marcus Miller and all those other bass players. I mean, they may not have done slap bass if he hadn't done anything. And obviously, he's a phenomenal player. I really like the song "Pow." It's got a really cool bass line, but those laser noises are just hysterical. So yeah, it's Larry Graham's the man for sure, and obviously Jack Bruce, John Lodge, all those guys. Very, very cool. Donald Dunn, yeah. A lot of these guys I've like read about in magazines more than like really broken down their bass playing, but it counts. Didn't he call the band Graham Central Station too? But yeah, there are a lot of good Larry Graham lines. He's a legend. But yeah, and I mean there are a lot of other bass players that we're not naming who still had influence over me. I'm trying to think. Roger Waters, he had some cool stuff with that fretless bass on "Hey You" for instance. Have a Cigar has a pretty cool bass line. Money. I mean, how influential is just that main groove? So there's a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah, well, you guys can definitely leave them. So after the live stream's over too, just leave all your favorite bass players that you think I should listen to if I haven't, or if I have listened to them, I'll check them out. I mean, some other people that I didn't name earlier. Rancid had a bass player, Matt Freeman, and he might be their only bass player, I think. But anyway, he did some really incredible pick work on Maxwell Murderer is the name of the song, and then he did another one. Was it Journey to the End of East Bay that had a cool walking line? And Seth, yeah, that Primus version of Have a Cigar was really cool. Was that on the Rhinoplasty, or was that on Miscellaneous Debris? I can't even remember. But it's funny with Primus, the first album that I got was the Rhinoplasty CD, and so it's just a bunch of covers, and I didn't know it was going to be like all covers. I remember they did Devil Went Down to Georgia, and they made the part where the devil's playing, just a lot more metal. And they did a whole claymation video for that. It was really cool. Yeah, and then Rancid, that Maxwell Murder, I don't think I could imitate it, especially without a pick. Yeah, but it's just a whole fast flurry of notes, and it's all over the place. So got to give him credit for being one of the coolest punk rock bass players for sure. And then trying to think, so Pink Floyd, what other bands really influenced me? There's a lot of like 90s grunge stuff that's really cool. I feel like an underrated bass player, Stone Temple Pilots bass player. I don't know his name, but Stone Temple Pilots, if you know the bass player's name, he just has a whole lot of things that, and songs like Plush, songs like what's it called, Interstate Love Song. There's just a whole bunch of really cool bass parts in there, and it's very influenced by like that James Jamerson school of thinking, and just I really love how the drums and the bass lock in on that. I'm trying to remember who Mark Farmer is. I'm not sure. Okay, so the Have a Cigar was on Miscellaneous Debris. Cool. I need to bust those Primus albums out again. It's been a long time since I listened to all that stuff. But that's really cool stuff. But yeah, there's so many influences. So this has really ended up more of a like list of oh, okay, he was Grand Funk. Okay. Yeah, Lemmy's really cool. I could never really get into them too much. I think it was something about the vocal style. It's just like early on, I just couldn't get into it. But like now, I appreciate it a lot more than I did then. There are a lot of bands I couldn't get into just because I didn't like the way the vocals sounded or something when I was younger. So hopefully I have a much more open mind now and can dig that. But that's cool. Yeah, so you said he's Grand Funk's bass player. Well, then I have heard his playing at least. I'm trying to remember how. What's the name of that song? Give me two. Their top two songs, and it's probably the second one you'll name. I'm Your Captain? Is that them? That part's cool. But isn't it I'm Your Captain and Closer to Home? It's like they're two songs that are basically boom pushed up against each other, and it's both. Trying to remember all the bass parts. There's so many good ones in that song though. That is a good call. He is a very underrated bass player. Something like that. And then that yeah. So that stuff's really cool. What's the name? I picked it out, so I might have it wrong from memory. But anyway, That is really good. He's a really good bass player. I like his lines. He's very creative. But yeah, it's been ages since I played that song. I used to play that in a band that played at a blues place out of all places. So we get in trouble when we play stuff like that, but we would anyway. And then there are a lot of bass players that maybe I don't know their name, but they were still very influential. Oh, okay. Yeah. So I didn't know I didn't know the names of the different players in that band, but yeah, no, he's an awesome player. So he says Mel Shatcher. Okay, cool. And then another one, you know, I thought it was I mean Leon Wilkerson of oh, what's it called? Underrated bass player, and Leonard Skinner. He wrote some cool lines, but then there's also the other bass player who happens to really be one of the guitar players in Skinner, but he played bass for a short period of time when they recorded all of the hits pretty much. So I'm trying to remember his first name. His last name is King, I think. But anyway, he ended up playing all the bass lines on all the songs like Simple Man and all these other ones. And it's like if you go and you isolate those bass lines, they're really insane bass lines. And you realize it's because it was a guitar player playing them, and he kind of played the bass like a guitar. And when you isolate it, you can really hear that. But it's still really cool stuff. It's still a master musician coming up with some really, really awesome parts. But yeah, so Skinner has some interesting stuff, and then of course Allman Brothers. I mean, oh my gosh, Barry Oakley. And then later on they got Oteil Burbridge playing for them, and Oteil is a phenomenal bass player. If you like hearing chords on the bass, he's like the master of that. And then he solos and sings along with his solo. He's also like the master of that, so he counts as well. All right, so now we're back to U-bass questions. Let's see what we got. AV Ninja. Hey Steven, I love your videos. I was wondering what strings you would use for your U-bass. I'm thinking about getting one. Any suggestions as to which U-bass you recommend? So I don't really endorse a specific one. It really does depend on your budget, of course. I'm thinking, I haven't really played on it, but I've played on other models in the same price range, so I imagine it plays similarly to these other ones. I really like the way the Ebony model U-bass looks, and I imagine it'll play a lot like the exotic mahogany U-bass that I have. I've been very happy with the way that one plays and the way that one sounds. As far as strings, sometimes I like the flat wound metal strings. And then honestly, with the if you were to get the Ebony one, you could either get it with the flat wound strings, or you could get it with the Pahoehoes, Pahoehoe. So those strings are pretty good as well. I do think that the Thunder Guts are good. I just think that they have a lot of string noise, so it just depends on that. But they're still pretty good. So I would look at my string comparison videos. I have a couple of string comparison videos, like flat wound versus round wound versus rubber. That video will give you a good idea for what style you're trying to play. If you're trying to play, if you're trying to get to sound more like an upright bass, you probably want one of the rubber strings kind of set up. So if you want it to sound more like an electric bass, then probably the round wounds or the flat wounds, depending on what sound you like. But the round wounds are very noisy, so I tend to prefer the flat wounds because they're like the best of both worlds. They don't have too much string noise. You can slide really easy on them, but they aren't super bright either. So if you like that brighter sound, then you might want the round wounds in comparison. But it just depends. Depends on what you like. So give them a listen, gauge the string noise, listen to stuff like that, and then you'll kind of know better. So hopefully that helps. But right now, for some reason, I'm thinking the next one I get might be one of the Ebony models, unless I go all the way out and get one of the solid body custom shot, the California U-basses. So unless I spend that much to get one, I might end up with an Ebony model fairly soon. Cool. So great question. And then Stu Cook of CCR. Yeah, I'd say so. I don't know a lot of his bass playing. Most of the songs I hear from him are really simple bass playing, and there's nothing wrong with simple. I mean, honestly, it was perfect for the music. But it just depends on how you're gauging a really good, underrated bass player, because some people are underrated because they did exactly what the songs called for better than anyone else could, right? Oh, here's somebody that I completely missed on my list somehow, Paul McCartney. Yeah, he had a big influence on me. I learned a lot of Beatles songs, right? So yeah, I'd have to include him on that list as well. For whatever reason, I just forgot until now. But yeah, he's phenomenal as well. He influenced a lot of things, though. He probably also influenced my songwriting a lot, which hopefully my songwriting will, I'll get to a point where I'm really happy with it and everything. But he definitely influences me from a songwriting perspective as well as a bass perspective, and a little bit on guitar with the finger picking stuff, like with Blackbird and everything. But some notable Paul McCartney lines. I mean, there are a lot of them, really. Let's see. Come Together is like the one that comes to mind the most, right? Oh, sorry. Yeah, so you got that kind of thing. And then trying to think, songs like Penny Lane have a really good like walking kind of, he always has like a bouncy feel to his bass lines, which I really like a lot. Something in the Way She Moves, that song has a whole lot of a whole lot of melodic content to it. And I mean, there's so many. I would leave out stuff every time. Dear Prudence has that cool bouncy part that. Obviously that's a really cool line, whether I'm playing it right or not. Shoot, so many. I can't even think of all of them. But yeah, Paul McCartney definitely would have had a big influence on my bass playing too. So somehow I left him out. I know, right? Somehow I forgot him. But yeah, he's only like the most influential one and the one that people compare me to the most. I've gotten those comments of, you look like a chubby Paul McCartney or whatever, which is kind of funny looking back on it. Someone put that comment on a video, and that comment got 100 likes. I just find that fascinating that people do that. Lovely Rita Meter Maid, yep. Yeah, so there are so many good Beatles songs, and obviously stuff that he did with Wings, of course, too. Bass lines and that are really awesome, and yeah, he's definitely influential. I think I mentioned it very briefly when I was going through this Motown book, but let's see who else. Nathan Watts, Stevie Wonder's bass player. Obviously, he had a big influence. Of course, a lot of the influence from Stevie Wonder's stuff really comes from Stevie playing bass lines on the Moog, and that's really been not more influential, because obviously his bass parts are awesome too, but some of the stuff that I thought was bass was really that. I've been thinking about buying a Beatle bass, but honestly, the Journeyman has that vibe. I almost feel like if I pick on that bass, it kind of gives me that feeling and almost that sound. So I almost feel like I don't need one, although it wouldn't hurt to have one. I got to get a left-handed one and start playing left-handed and join a Beatles tribute band and get my hair done right and do my facial hair exactly how he looked on. I'm trying to remember which. There's a shirt that I have that has a picture of him, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, is that you on your shirt?" And it's like, no, it's Paul McCartney. But I've seriously gotten that a few times, which I always take as a huge compliment. But I don't think I look that much like him, but I take it as a huge compliment anyway. Let's see. I'm trying to think of other Paul McCartney bass lines. Taxman, obviously that's pretty cool too. All right. Let's see. Hey man, I found your channel because I just changed my U-bass strings and I had fret noise on the A string. Haven't managed to fix it yet because, yeah, I mentioned, Sean, I mentioned something earlier. And everybody, if you see that Soul Night Live, that's my bandmate and friend Sean. Sean Tonar, he runs Progressive Ears, or he started Progressive Ears. It's a forum about progressive rock, but now he's got this channel on here, Soul Night Live. So check out his channel because he interviews famous musicians. So like if you know, do you know the bass player Guy Pratt? He played on some Madonna stuff. He played on some live Pink Floyd stuff and a whole bunch of other things. Well, Sean interviewed him really recently, and then he's also done an interview. I think someone mentioned Moody Blues, John, right? John Lodge. So he did an interview with him as well. So if you get a chance, check out his channel, that Soul Night Live channel, because he interviews a lot of people, and a lot of them end up being bass players that, you know, are influential. Obla, that's an interesting version of it. Obla fa. That's funny. Obla. That one's good. Oh yeah, and then Billy Sheehan. That's right. You got contact with him. That's awesome. So I mentioned Billy Sheehan earlier as one of the influences when I was talking about that 3-finger technique. You know. Yeah, and yeah, Bill Wyman's a good one. For some reason, I didn't really delve too deep into you know, into his playing as much, but he definitely has some cool bass playing. But he's also just kind of like a true bass player in that he provides a solid foundation, a solid groove. But yeah, Miss You does have a cool bass line like that, and we did jam out on that a lot. But yeah, he does stand out when he gets a chance to, like on Miss You. He has a really cool bass part that's more disco influenced, which is kind of interesting. It's like almost a disco line, but I don't think I play that one like he does on the recording. I think I add too much to it. But yeah, so he's an influence, but more like, you know, in my 20s and stuff, not really like in the formative years of, you know, learning all sorts of things. But yeah, he's definitely good. I guess other bass players to mention, a lot of guys on like Steely Dan stuff, you know, they have some good playing, really good stuff. But I guess I have to include them, and I have to include a whole bunch of bands that that we cover with a lot of these other bands. Nathan East should be on there because the Footloose bass line. I mean, he did that. Then he did the Daft Punk Get Lucky bass line, a whole lot of other stuff. Yeah, Chuck Rainey, of course. His Chuck Rainey on Peg and all sorts of other things. How he'd sneak slap bass in there, and it somehow got in under the radar, and they didn't want slap bass on the recording, so he just hunched down in his chair, turned around, and played it. Yeah, Chuck Rainey is a great bass player on that Steely Dan stuff. But yeah, so there are a lot of really good players. So it's really hard to name all the influences, and you know. But I think I covered a good amount on here. So if you have any other ones, obviously after the live stream's over, you can just post them in the comment. And if there are any that you think I maybe haven't heard, you can put them in the comments too. And you know, hopefully I'll get around to checking them all out. But yeah, once again, check out Soul Night Live. If you like his channel, go ahead and subscribe to it because, you know, obviously he's already done a lot of really good bass player interviews, and now he's got Billy Sheehan coming on and a couple other things. There are a couple where I guest co-hosted, so that was kind of fun getting to do that. But yeah, it's just a lot of cool interviews and a lot of good stuff. And Sean he's really knowledgeable, and he knows what kind of questions to ask people. So even if you're used to seeing these guys interviewed, he's a good person to interview. Who's that guy? I think that guy is terrible. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you, Seth. I appreciate the compliment. Unless you're talking about a different Stephen Cox. I know there is another Stephen Cox that plays bass, but I think they were like a younger kid playing upright in a bluegrass band. But that's a different story. But and then there are other Stephen Cox musicians, but I don't know how many of them play bass. But there's probably more than one other one out there somewhere. But yeah, I appreciate that. I think you know, I try my best, but a lot of these guys that influence me obviously play much better. But it's just some really good bass players. I'm looking at this list on the Standing in the Shadows of Motown to see if there are any more that stand out. Pino Palladino is in here too. I wonder which song he played on. Oh, it looks like they even got Paul McCartney. Is there one on here? Which song did he do? Anyway, if you get a chance to find that book, definitely check it out because it's just so cool. They break down the style, they tell the history of kind of what's going on. I guess he just talked about it. I don't know if he played on. Okay, he may not have played on any of them. He may have just left his little part, but he did say something in here about James Jamerson. So that's kind of cool. Speaking of Paul McCartney, but yeah, I guess that's really about it for now. I mean, there are obviously so many others that I missed, and so many others that are maybe more obscure and local and stuff. But yep, I'm my own critic. But yeah, there's just so many good bass players, and if you get a chance to check out some of the ones I mentioned, let me know. Hopefully that'll kind of like open your mind up to some new players, whether it be like you've never listened to Metallica and you like Metallica's bass playing now because you heard that part of Orion. And obviously Clifford did a whole bunch of other things too. Or if it's something like you didn't check out upright bass players and now you want to check out Ray Brown because he's a huge influence on how I approach jazz. And then Jaco Pastorius, of course. So hopefully that's helpful to you guys. And like I said, if you have more people that influenced you that you think I should check out and give a listen to, just leave them in the comments, and I'll check them out when I get a chance to. Oh right, yeah, Pino did play in the Who, or with the Who, sorry, recently. And I have a friend that went and saw them, and I think he might have been playing bass when he went to see them. I can't remember. Sean, if you're still there, I think when you saw him, it wasn't Pino, right? But did you ever see them with Pino as well? I can't remember. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why it keeps. It did that earlier when you mentioned Pino Palladino. It said Pink the other time too, but I knew who you were talking about. So I guess it was just a correction. Whatchamacallit, autocorrect or something. But yeah, good stuff. But yeah, if you get a chance, oh my gosh, we're talking about the Who and we didn't mention John Entwistle. Sorry, that's a big one to leave out too, because yeah, I'm very influenced by his playing too. There were these bass magazines that just had a whole bunch of little transcriptions in there, and I remember the bass solo to. But yeah, I remember learning the My Generation bass solo. I mean, that's such a cool thing. What was it? What was that? What was that? Yeah, something like that. But obviously the My Generation bass parts, it's really simple other than that, but the solo is really cool. And then of course, just the way he approached the line on Who Are You? He had a whole bunch of octave things, but it's like the rhythm that made that one cool. And then obviously, if you've heard him do a whole bunch of solos, his solos are amazing. Oh yeah, The Real Me. I'm not even going to try to pretend that I know all the bass stuff that goes on under that right now. But yeah, he's just a phenomenal player. Oh yeah. So I mean, there's so many good Who lines too. So it's like between him, John Paul Jones, of course, I mentioned earlier. I mean, John Paul Jones had a lot of them as well. But it's just hard to, yeah, there's just so many bass players. This is all over the place. Yeah, the Who Are You, that whole. kind of rhythm was kind of cool underneath what was going on, and it added a lot to everything. And Pinball Wizard, yeah, that one's cool. I'm trying to remember, how did that bass line go? I can't even remember. There's so many cool things about that line too. If I could just remember. I can't remember it at all. So funny because I used to play that one with Sean in that band. What Motown player fits the U-bass sound? James Jamerson is the guy that I was talking about, where basically, I mean, all those guys, really all the Motown sound had that muted string thing going on, because a lot of them had a little piece of foam or sponge or something. It was probably foam most of the time, but you could imitate it with a piece of sponge up under right next to the bridge, and that would just automatically mute the strings. So that sound just kind of gives you a halfway muted sound, and rubber strings also kind of give you a halfway muted sound because of the material. So I kind of feel like it's James Jamerson mainly, but really anybody that was playing in the Motown sound kind of had that muted tone. So to answer your question, Rock B78, yeah. And I don't know if I mentioned him much, but what's his name? Bernadine White, Rocco Prestia. I mean, I said it when I was naming all the bass players in here, but obviously those guys influenced me too. But yeah, just so many things. But it was probably about time to go ahead and call it, because I think we've named a bunch of bass players, and yeah, I should include Tony Levin, but I think when I was younger, he didn't really influence my playing much. But seeing him play with Crimson recently was phenomenal, and just hearing what he's done with King Crimson especially, and I guess he could influence me a little bit with like the Sledgehammer bass line. You know, obviously that one's really cool, and I learned that one for a gig in my like very early 20s or something. So I guess he counts in that sense too. But yeah, I guess I could include Tony Levin too. I was just trying to think of people that like actually influenced me like growing up and everything. But there are people that continue to influence me now. So I guess it doesn't matter. You can look at it either way. But thank you guys so much for hanging out, and I appreciate y'all commenting and giving me a couple of people to listen to that I haven't checked out yet. And yeah, and you know, obviously we'll be doing another video on Tuesday, and then a live stream next Thursday as well. So I will see you guys next week with all that. So have a good week. Be safe. I know things are going crazy, especially here in the U.S. So just be safe out there, and you know, try to, you know, stay in as much as possible, because just, you know, there's still a pandemic going on and some other stuff. But yeah, have a great week. I'll see you guys next time, and play some bass. Bye, guys.